Friday, everybody. It is Insta Live on Fry. And as always, it's Audrey Button from Safe Harbors of the Finger Lakes. I use the pronouns she, her, hers. And like always, it's 2 p.m. So our typical Friday at 2 p.m. where we do our Instagram Live. So unless you're obviously watching this later, it probably won't be 2 p.m. for you, but it was recorded at 2 p.m. So anyways, we're going to get into our last Instagram Live for Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month because it's actually almost March. I can't believe that. So speaking of March, quick, I want you to keep an eye out. I actually just realized it's almost March and February ends on Sunday. So keep your eye out for March's schedule today after I'm done. And keep an eye out for that and see what topics we're going to discuss next month. And so with that, we're going to be talking about how music normalizes. I know I put the topic as relationship violence, but we'll also talk about sexual violence and like in general, any sort of violence against a person, like relationship violence of any sort, even child abuse. We'll kind of briefly discuss that as well, or child witnessing, domestic violence, things like that. And so we're gonna get in that. I know we kind of like already started talking about that with the discussion 2 weeks ago, with Taylor Swift's music and breaking it down some of the lyrics. And so we'll talk about that today in further extent. So like always, I always give a content warning because some of the material I discuss may be sensitive to some. So please take care of yourself however you need to. And so the video will also be available after, because it's going to be recorded. Wow, I can't talk today either. And it's going to be available on our Instagram page and our YouTube channel. And so just a quick disclaimer before I start, the views and opinions expressed in the video are not necessarily those of Safe Harbors of the Finger Lakes, but of those in the video. And so with that, we'll get started. So like always, like I've been referencing the last couple weeks, is the One Love's 10 signs of a healthy relationship and 10 signs of an unhealthy relationship. I will try to reference them throughout the discussion today. So if you want to know where to find these, it's on the One Love website, which is joinonelove.org. So I will try to reference them the best I can today. And so just keep them in mind while we go through today's discussion. So we're just talking about how music kind of normalizes violence, specifically like relationship violence and sexual violence, which, I kind of want to do a little, like, the importance of why it's important to be honest and, forthcoming about violence, and that's, important to recognize the influence it has on the population, because while artists in music, artists use music as a way to share their stories and thoughts or their life experiences. Sometimes artists have discussed relationship violence or sexual violence in a way that makes it seem normal. And I know we've talked about normalization before. It's kind of like it's almost expected. It's a normal part of a relationship or a normal part of life or things like that, which is, it's problematic in that sense because media does influence many people. I'm not saying it causes this violence, it influences how we think about relationships or sexual relationships of any sort and things like that, because especially with our generation, especially right now with COVID, we're surrounded and bombarded by media. And this is not just music. I know we're focusing on music, but you can see this in TV shows, movies, magazines, billboards, everything portrays things in a certain way, obviously to catch your eye or get you interested or buy the product or things like that. But what's problematic with media is that sometimes it doesn't portray things how it really should, or people get the wrong message from it or are just influenced it by not realizing they're being influenced by that, if that makes sense. And so, a certain genre of music or any sort of genre, like a book or anything like that, does this. They put out this normalization of violence, and so it's not just specific to one genre by any means. I mean, this is seen in rap, pop music, country music, alternative rock, and that's not even all the genres in music. And, there have been artists, thankfully, who have used their platforms to discuss and write songs about healthy relationships or the reality of violence or condemning violence, which, that's awesome that, there are artists that are doing that, which I think is really important to recognize because some people don't realize the severity of violence or how it affects people. And I think that honesty about, portraying what a healthy relationship should look like or what violence looks like and how that affects people in a real way is really important, because especially for like artists who've gone through it themselves, because people don't think that they can go through that kind of thing maybe, or they experience it differently, but it really brings out how anyone can experience violence no matter who you are and what you do, and it's just important to recognize that and how we can support each other through this, and educating each other on healthy and unhealthy relationships, which is why I bring up the one love stuff and why I think that's so important. Because people assume love's kind of a natural emotion that you acquire while growing up, but really you're learning about love through all these outlets, whether it is through family members or friends or school or the media teaching you about love and what it's supposed to look like, which we could get in a whole discussion about how the media teaches you how to love a certain way or what it's supposed to look like. But before I get too into that, I want to talk about maybe some unhealthy songs that kind of touch upon relationship violence or sexual violence or unhealthy characteristics in general in a relationship. And there's probably millions of songs out there. I try to pick songs that most people would hopefully know. And so I'll start with Gunpowder and Lead. It's by Miranda Lambert. It's a country song. So it talks about, it seems that this person was abused. The person went to prison. The person came out of prison and she's threatening him with a gun. I'm not saying that violence towards her was okay. We don't know who this is about, by the way. But you should never, use violence against violence in that sense, especially with a gun. Guns and DV go kind of very hand in hand. Escalates the situation. That's how people get hurt. So that's it's more, they try to focus, they say it's female empowerment, but threatening someone with a weapon is not, healthy in that sense. And then, Before He Cheats is another country song by Carrie Underwood. So he cheats on her. So she takes a baseball bat to his car, which is one of the big things that this person did in this narrative, in this song, which doing property damage is probably not very healthy either. So, and that one's kind of about female empowerment too in that sense, but spinning it with female empowerment, which yes, you should stand up, you shouldn't put up to someone who cheats on you, but probably damaging their car is probably not the best way to do it. And then, I'm talking about a lot of country songs, but I promise there's another couple of genres I'll talk about. But Goodbye Earl is by the Chicks. They were also used to be known as the Dixie Chicks, which is also about kind of female empowerment in a way, but the girl who was abused and her friend who found out that she was being abused in a domestic violence situation, found out, and they decided to get revenge against him, and they poisoned him and killed him and disposed of his body and everything, which, like I said, you shouldn't fight violence with violence, but it showed how supportive her friend was, but, not to the extent to murder somebody, but but then we get into Blurred Lines. So this is more about sexual violence or over-sexualizing something. It's by Robin Thicke and Pharrell Williams. It's over-sexualizing somebody. they don't get consent, like the term blurred lines is like blurred consent, which you should always, always, always get clear consent. If they're under the influence or, of any sort of alcohol or drugs, or they're not sure, they're acting like they don't want to, even if they said yes, then that's not consent. You need to have a clear yes. They need to, their body language needs to be on point with it. How they say it needs to be on point with it. They cannot be under the influence of any sort of drug or alcohol. And having that clear conversation is important. And they're kind of dehumanizing. Well, they are dehumanizing her in the sense like they're seen as an animal. I need to tame you. People, like dehumanizing people takes away, the human element in it. And it kind of loses that empathy part of it. It treats them as an object in a way, which, obviously people are not objects, they're human beings. So realizing how like dehumanization leads to some sort of, violence of some sort because they're seen as an object rather as a person. So I want you to think about that too. And then, Every Breath You Take by The Police, it's about stalking. If you just look up these lyrics, you'll see what I'm talking about. Jealous by Nick Jonas. He talks about how she's really beautiful, everyone wants her, a piece of her, which a piece of her, she's not an object, she's a human being. But he also talks about, how he might be possessive, which he is possessive, sounds pretty possessive in the song. So that's an unhealthy characteristic in a relationship. And lastly, with the dehumanization element and over-sexualization part, Animals by Maroon 5, they're like hunting you down, like the whole dominance thing, hunting you down kind of thing. That's also unhealthy. So luckily there are songs, and I'm sure there's way more, about talking about violence in an honest light, and what it really looks like. So a big one is Till It Happens to You by Lady Gaga. It was actually in a documentary about campus sexual violence. This song is super powerful. It does talk about the impact of sexual violence and trauma and what it's really probably like for, a victim survivor. It is an extremely powerful song, which, is really important to talk about that kind of stuff and experience in an honest way. And obviously every experience is different for every survivor, but I think Lady Gaga did a really great job of, portraying it in a very honest, light in a way. It's just a very powerful song. This one, I actually didn't know what the song was. It's Cherry Wine by, I'm probably going to say it wrong, I'm sorry if I'm saying his name wrong, but it's called Cherry Wine. So he did a great job. He's actually a huge advocate for domestic violence. And this song talks about a man suffering from domestic violence and the cycle of abuse that they experienced in a very honest way, like the emotional, the physical abuse that this person experienced. And didn't try to glamorize it in any way, was super honest and, the constant abuse cycle and the power and control, which we've talked about many times. And then a couple of songs that I have actually heard many times, but actually really didn't put a lot of thought into the meaning about them. By Martina McBride, she has a song called Independence Day. And this is about a child witnessing domestic violence and how people in the town turn a blind eye to this abuse that this child's mother was experiencing, which is very common. So that was an interesting take on what a child witnesses with domestic violence. And then Concrete Angel, which is also by Martina McBride, discusses a child experiencing abuse and neglect and what that looks like. So songs that discuss, healthy, positive relationships or sexual experiences. Same Love by Macklemore and Ryan Lewis. It focus is more on LGBTQ marriage rights and the right to love, which is awesome. And then Unconditionally by Katy Perry, kind of accepting them for who they are, like for them to be themselves, which is amazing. XO by Beyonce, loving to the fullest extent. Tomorrow isn't necessarily promised, so obviously don't take anything for granted. They're in the here and now. And then All of Me by John Legend, giving all to their relationship, just as it sounds, and just loving them for who they are, even if they drive them, they have their little annoyances, but they love them for who they are no matter what. And Just the Way You Are by Bruno Mars, which is, you're beautiful no matter what, accepting them for who they are kind of thing. So there's obviously way more songs out there, but it's just important. The purpose of this discussion is just, it was important to recognize the meaning of the songs and, looking at the lyrics, listening to the song in, a more critical lens, and, having discussions about them. Like when you hear a new song on the radio or Spotify, I don't know if people really listen to the radio anymore, so maybe you're on Spotify or on YouTube and you hear a song or watch the music video. Look at the lyrics, maybe do some investigation. And what does this song really mean? What's the meaning behind this? Especially look at songs that are promoting unhealthy relationships or sexual violence of any sort, and talk about them, not just with, for yourself, but for your friends, your family. Say, hey, did you know what this song was about? Like, I took a look at the lyrics. This is what it means. At least this is what I think it means. We should have a discussion. It doesn't mean you can't like the song, obviously, but it's important to have that dialogue around it and why it's important to recognize it. Because I think a lot of times we just listen to something and don't fully register the meaning of it. And same with watching movies or anything like that. I've ruined a lot of romantic movies by looking back at what they actually mean. And we did that with Twilight last week, and Beauty and the Beast. Not saying those are bad necessarily. It's important to recognize what they really mean and looking back at those things that you maybe didn't realize. So I'm just going off. Sorry, everybody. It's just important to call out people in their music or in the entertainment world, industry, who are violent or abusive as themselves to their partner, family, or children, and let it be known that violence is never acceptable no matter who you are either. So that was kind of our discussion today, but just, recognizing the influence of media, especially like even music, and how it's portrayed, and just paying a closer attention to what you're listening to, and, having those honest discussions with everybody about it. So thank you so much for tuning in. I kind of was rambling all day today, at least during this. But I really appreciate you all, stopping in and listening. But hopefully this kind of gets you thinking about what's around you with the media. So that is that. Thank you. Happy Friday. As always, if you need to reach out, you can call us at our 24-hour hotline, which is 800-247-7273, or you can check out our website, which is www.shflny.org. Or you can obviously message us on our social media, comment if you have any more questions, or want to hear more, I guess. So I hope everyone has a great weekend, and I will see you next week.